When the 9th generation Civic was introduced, as well as the latest edition of the Si performance model, it was criticized for not having the performance figures of some of its competition and not having a great dynamic style either. When we pitted the car not long after its launch with the Mazda Speed 3, we were both impressed and disappointed. For starters, we were actually pretty impressed because despite the fact that it was down 1.9 seconds a lap on our test track, it did so without the use of high performance tires and the fact that it's down 62 horsepower to the Mazda and 110 foot-pounds of torque. But what really disappointed us about all that was that it just didn't have the feel that previous Si models have had. So to solve that issue, Honda has unveiled this car, the Civic Si HFP. The HFP, or Honda Factory Performance Kit, is really for the enthusiast that demands the most out of their Civic Si. Now, included in that kit is this Aero Kit you can see here on the car. It looks really good. It really changes the look of the vehicle and isn't feminine, something we really criticized the new Civic Si when we first saw it. Now on top of that, you get these beautiful 18-inch wheels with some stickier Michelin Pilot Super Sport tires, and you can add on to that the fact that it's got a lowered and reworked suspension. It sits about a half an inch lower to the ground, which is really obvious from this car, especially with the Aero Kit on it, and they've retuned the shock absorbers as well. The whole idea is to take out a lot of that body roll we complained about when we first drove the Civic Si. One definite advantage of the HFP setup on the Civic Si is that unlike a lot of aftermarket kits, it's not really stiffly sprung. It doesn't ruin the suspension feel, and you can still be really comfortable. It accepts bumps on the road, and it still is very much a Honda Civic used for everyday use. And if there is one more thing I should point out, another item that this package does include, it's got red floor mats, which you have to love. Having just driven the Civic Si HFP through two sizable autocross tracks, I have to say this is the car enthusiasts have been asking for. The Michelins bite much harder in the corners, and while the Si itself actually does set nicely in corners, there's too much body roll. This car, however, there's a lot less body roll, it bites earlier, and it gives you way more confidence behind the wheel. And that confidence helps you really exploit one of the Civic's best attributes, and that's the fact that despite being a front-wheel drive car, it really behaves a lot like a rear-wheel drive car. And you can really toss it in the corners and kind of drive it with the rear, pitching it around, and really get the most out of it. You can scrub off speed by dragging the rear as opposed to using the brakes, and it's really handy for that, especially here on an autocross track. There are no changes to what's under the hood. It's still a 2.4-liter engine making 201 horsepower and 170 foot-pounds of torque. I would ask that Honda add a little bit more potency to that power plant, especially to keep up with some of the hot hatches in this segment. But as it stands, the new driving dynamics of the Civic Si HFP really help you get a lot more out of that 201 horsepower. There are a few downsides to the Civic Si HFP, however. Starting with the fact that in many ways it's really just a marketing initiative by Honda to rebrand the Civic Si. And the reason I say that is because it's not readily accessible. Honda's only making 500 cars for the US and 400 for Canada, and most of them are already sold. The other downside, of course, is the cost. The HFP package costs $3,830, which brings the roughly $22,000 Civic Si up over $26,000. So what I'd really like to see from Honda would be more HFP in the regular Si for the same money.